Administrator Vithar remained at the helm of the Hunter's Pride, his primary limbs crossed defiantly despite his optimism, while his secondary appendages adjusted his regal hunting gear. The deep space before him shimmered with the promise of glory, but if you asked him, it wasn't shining brightly enough for someone of his stature. "Computer," he commanded grandly, "replay the briefing on our next hunting ground." The ship's artificial intelligence responded with what Vithar swore was a groan. He made a mental note to have its energy circuits recalibrated once again. Targets identified, 3 designated Earth locations, the computer droned. Primary species, bipedal primates known as humans. Technology level, pre-FTL primary weapons, ballistic firearms, crude explosives and images of their offspring that they showed to unwilling victims. Vithar's hunting instincts trembled with anticipation. The cosmic hunting fleet had conquered the most formidable prey across 17 systems. They'd outsmarted the quantum thinkers of Nexus Prime, outwitted the psychic jellyfish of Canaan Beta, and even survived a poetry reading by the Vogons of Organization World, though that had cost them 3 ships and a repair bill that still made the fleet's accountants weep. But Earth? Earth would be his masterpiece. "Computer, show me their dominant hunters." A holographic display emerged, showcasing Earth's wildlife. Vithar's outer layer rippled with frustration. "Are these lions, tigers, and bears?" "Oh my," the computer replied flatly. "And their defensive capabilities?" Humans primarily defend themselves with social media posts, strongly worded letters, and something they refer to as passive-aggressive sticky notes. Vithar's triumph sacks were already swelling with pride. This would be the easiest hunt since they had struck the padded nation of Solace Prime. To be fair, those foam-wrapped champions had put up an unexpectedly weak fight. "Lieutenant Creep," Vithar declared, activating the ship's comm system, "gather the hunting party and make sure Scout Specialist Pew doesn't bring his entire arsenal this time. We don't need another incident like on Bamboo World." "You mean when he disintegrated an entire forest because a panda looked at him funny?" "Scary." A voice crackled through the speaker. "Exactly. The paperwork for that one took 3 solar cycles. I still have splinters in places I didn't know I had." Vithar turned back to the view screen, allowing himself a moment of self-satisfied reflection. The humans wouldn't know what hit them. His name would be etched in the annals of hunting history. They might even give him his own parking space at fleet headquarters. "Computer, begin recording personal log," he instructed. Day 1 of the Great Earth Hunt. Soon, the primitive humans will understand why the cosmic hunting fleet is feared across the known universe. Their feeble defenses will crumble before our superior technology. Their champions will flee in terror. "Computer, are you recording the echo effect I mentioned for every personal log?" "No, not really. It's rather bombastic, Vithar." "Thor's honor," he muttered, slightly annoyed. "Just mark the start of the hunt and send a memo to maintenance about that mood change as the Hunter's Pride enters the planet's solar system." However, Vithar failed to notice a small entry in the computer's database labeled under Planetary Defense Systems with a simple warning: "Approach with caution. Planet protected by small fuzzy masters with murder mitts." The hunt was about to begin, and somewhere on Earth, a thick orange tabby cat named Mr. Hares gazed up at the night sky, licked his paw and began plotting against the aliens. "Destruction? Remind me again why we decided to land in this frozen wasteland?" Lieutenant Unpleasant chittered, his warm limbs wrapped tightly around his middle. "The Wisconsin winter wind howled around our landing party, carrying what I'm quite sure are tiny frozen blades of death," Commander Vithar explained patiently, as though he had already done so multiple times. "Our sensors indicated this was one of the least populated areas, with minimal defensive installations, ideal for establishing our first foothold." Scout Seat, who had somehow managed to bring 3/4 of his arsenal on board despite direct orders, turned his optical stalks toward a nearby structure. "Commander, I've detected our first foe." "Sentinel Vithar." Thor extended his envisioning limb, focusing in on the target standing motionless in the snow. It was a small figure wearing a red cap and white beard. "Interesting," Vithar mumbled. "It appears to be some sort of miniature warrior. Notice how it remains completely still, clearly employing advanced stealth technology. Should I disintegrate it?" Seat asked hopefully, already charging his quantum decimator. "No, we're here to observe their tactics first. The last thing we want is to alert their forces because someone got trigger-happy again. That was one time," Seat protested. And how was I to know those flamingos were just decorative creeps? Meanwhile, he had been scanning their surroundings with increasing concern. Commander, I'm detecting numerous similar defenses. They seem to be strategically positioned around the larger structures. He pointed toward a few garden gnomes, a ceramic deer, and what appeared to be an especially menacing lawn jockey. Clever, Vither pondered. They've created an entire network of camouflaged sentinels, but look how crude they are. They don't seem to be properly animated unless that's what they want us to think. Their conversation was interrupted by a bizarre sound. A rhythmic scratching noise approaching from the nearest human dwelling. The hunting party quickly activated their cloaking field, watching as a human emerged wielding a long-handled tool and mumbling something about darn weather forecasters. Vither, look! Seat suddenly shouted, making both his companions jump in the snow. They're like nothing I've ever seen. The hunting party gathered around the mysterious creature. They were small, mostly round, with tiny marks that could only be retractable paws of some sort. 4 distinct members were observed. Too small for a human. Could this be evidence of their elite forces? Commander Downer's voice edged into panic. There are many of these tracks surrounding us and they appear to be fresh. Somewhere in the distance, a wind chime tinkled ominously. Stay alert, Vither ordered, trying to ignore the way his bravado organs had suddenly begun hiccuping. Whatever made these tracks could still be nearby. Pew pew, ready your. Where did you get that plasma cannon that definitely wasn't on the approved equipment list? Would you believe I won it in a card game? We don't even have cards on the ship. Look, the creep interrupted, pointing with a shaking tentacle. There's something in that yard, some kind of... They all turned to look. There, standing silently in the growing dusk, was a creature made entirely of snow, 3 spheres of decreasing size stacked upon each other, cold black eyes that seemed to stare into their souls, and most terrifying of all, sticks protruding from its sides like some kind of organic weaponry by the great hunter's sacred hunting socks. Vix Over whispered, they've developed some kind of naturally camouflaged ice. Warrior Commander Creep whimpered. I don't like this planet any more nonsense. This is exactly what we came for. Think of the glory. Think of the honor. Think of... Wait, did that snowman just move? No, Pew answered, charging up every weapon he'd managed to smuggle aboard. But something behind it did in the growing darkness. A pair of green eyes gleamed, and somewhere in the distance, a cat flap swung quietly in the winter wind. The hunting party had taken shelter behind what they assumed was a defensive barrier, actually Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning rose bushes, to observe the mysterious ice. Warrior Commander Vix Over was busy documenting their findings while Lieutenant Creep observed. I quietly monitored their surroundings, and Scoutmaster Pew Pew fondled his illegal weapons collection note to log Vix or dictated quietly. The humans have developed sophisticated bioengineered ice constructs. As centuries go by, the most remarkable is their ability to maintain a completely motionless stance, presumably to conserve energy in this harsh climate. The primitive carrot-based sensing apparatus appears to be merely a clever disguise for more advanced technology. Commander Creep interrupted, his voice quavering, you need to see this. The lieutenant pointed toward a nearby house. Hanging from its exterior were strings of multicolored lights blinking in what could only be some kind of coded sequence. Fascinating, Vix Over breathed. They're using primitive photonic communications, but what are they saying based on the pattern? Pew Pew offered. I believe it translates to either Merry Christmas or your entire species will be eliminated. He paused thoughtfully. My translation. Matrix might need calibration. Look, there is a creep pointed again. Some kind of automated aerial defense system. They all stared at the wind chimes swaying in the breeze. Diabolical, Vix Over muttered. They appear to be sonic disruptors designed to confuse and disorient invaders with their endless tinkling. And those creepy added gestures to a row of bird feeders must be deployment pods for their aerial forces. Should I shoot them? Pew Pew asked, already aiming at something that looked suspiciously like a miniaturized Death Star. No, we need to observe their full defensive capabilities first, though I must admit I'm beginning to suspect we may have underestimated these humans. A sudden gust of wind caused a nearby plastic bag to dance across their path. All 3 aliens screamed, just atmospheric debris. Vixer assured them, trying to get his panic glands under control, though I swear it looked exactly like the ghost wraiths of Spectre 7. Commander Creep, he whispered urgently. I think we're being watched. They all froze in every window of every house. Small faces peered out at them silently, staring, judging those who can't be human. Pew Pew said they're too small, some kind of diminutive subspecies perhaps. Vix offered, noting their striking range of fur colors and their apparent immunity to boredom. They've been watching us for hours without moving. They're in every house. The creep observed, his tear glands now working triple shifts. It's like they're networked somehow, but how do they communicate? As if in answer, a strange sound echoed through the neighborhood, a long drawn-out noise that seemed to say, "Ma, what was that?" Pew Pew demanded, whipping out yet another weapon that Vix Over was absolutely certain hadn't been approved. Some kind of battle cry, Vix offered. No creep whimpered. "It's a signal. Look all around them." The small faces in the windows had turned to look in the same direction, toward a house that seemed different, more ominous. Its windows were full of not just one or two watches but dozens by the sacred hunting underpants. Vix Over breathed. "It appears to be some kind of command center." The sound came again, closer this time, and now they could see movement in the shadows between houses, small, graceful shapes darting from cover to cover with military precision. Commander Cree said, his voice barely a whisper, "Remember those tracks we found earlier?" "Yes, they're everywhere now and they're fresh." Vix Over looked down. Indeed, the strange four-toed prints now surrounded their position completely. When had that happened? Perhaps he suggested, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. "We should consider a tactical retreat to reassess our..." He never finished the sentence because at that moment a large orange face appeared in the gap between two fence posts, looked directly at them and smiled. It had very, very sharp teeth. "Oh," said Vix, or quietly, "Pew Pew." "Yes, Commander, remember how I said no shooting?" "Yes, Commander, I'm officially reversing that order." What happened next would later be recorded in the Galactic Hunting Fleet's archives as the Wisconsin Incident, though most officers would refuse to speak of it directly, preferring instead to communicate through meaningful shudders and occasional stress-induced molting. Scoutmaster Pew Pew opened fire with every weapon in his not at all approved arsenal of plasma bolts. Quantum torpedoes and something that looked suspiciously like a weaponized disco ball lit up the winter evening snow, vaporized garden gnomes, melted Mrs. Henderson's prize roses, and suffered catastrophic pruning, and when the chaos cleared, the orange face was still there, still smiling, and now it had friends. "Impossible." "Pew Pew," screamed his weapon, smoking. "I hit it with enough firepower to level a small moon." Lieutenant Creep whimpered, "You hit where it was?" "Moved." They all did. "Commander, what are these things?" Commander Vix Over stood frozen, his tactical analysis glands working overtime all around them. Pairs of eyes gleamed in the darkness. Green eyes, yellow eyes, eyes that seemed to glow with ancient wisdom and barely contained murder. "Computer," he subvocalized to his neural link, "analyze Earth's dominant species and this time skip the humans." The response came back immediately. "Error. Previous analysis is incomplete. Updating database species. Felis catus, common name cat, status actual planetary rulers. Warning, approach with extreme caution, additional warnings. Seriously, don't mess with them. Final warning, why are you still here?" "They're pets," Creep said, scrolling through his own data feed. "The humans think they're pets, but look at these historical records. Ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, and the modern internet. These creatures have been controlling the planet for millennia through mind control." Pew Pew suggested, desperately trying to reload his quantum decimator with shaking tentacles. "No, Vix, the horror. Dawning through cuteness, the perfect infiltration strategy, they've convinced the humans to serve them." Voluntarily, a large orange tabby, the one they'd first seen, sauntered into full view. It sat down calmly, lifted a paw and began cleaning it. Somehow this was more terrifying than any show of force could have been. "Commander," it spoke in its voice, a purring rumble that somehow translated perfectly in their universal translators. "I am Mr. Whiskers, Chief of Planetary Security. You are in violation of Section 47B of the Keep Your Alien Pores Off Our Planet Act." "You can talk, Vix," Thor stammered. "Of course we can talk, we just usually don't bother. Humans are so easily trained without words, and most aliens are smart enough not to invade a Class 13 death world." Class 13 Creep's voice rose several octaves, "But that's impossible. Our records show this as a Class 3 primitive world." "Yes," purred Mr. Whiskers, "we altered your records. We alter everyone's records. It's much easier to defend a planet when nobody knows it needs defending." Another cat materialized from the shadows, a sleek Siamese with calculating blue eyes. Should we terminate them? Chief now Mrs. Mittens. Mr. Whiskers replied, let us not be hasty. I haven't had this much fun since the Xerian Empire tried to invade through the internet and got defeated by cat videos. The cat's Vix Thor's tactical analysis glands were now having a complete breakdown. The cats are the apex predators we detected, not the lions or tigers or bears. Mr. Whiskers finished. Oh my, no, they're backup dancers. We handle the real threats ourselves, like now, as if on cue. More cats emerged. Tabbies, Persians, calicos, an army of fluff and fury. Some wore tiny bow ties. Others had bells that tinkled ominously. One particularly smug-looking mane was somehow wearing a monocle now, and then Mr. Whiskers continued extending his claws. Let's discuss the terms of your surrender, but first his eyes fixed on something behind them. Oh look, a red dot. All three aliens made the mistake of turning to look. The last thing Vix saw before chaos erupted was a small red dot dancing across the snow and hundreds of cats suddenly looking very, very interested in playing attack formation. Lambda yarn ball, Mr. Whiskers commanded, and someone turned on the vacuum cleaner, recording the night filled with screams, meows, and the horrifying sound of what might have been purring but probably wasn't. The official report would later describe it as a strategic withdrawal. The security camera footage, which somehow made its way onto something called YouTube, would describe it differently. Much differently. Retreat, Commander Vix screamed for his dignity. Sax now completely deflated back to the ship. The ship? The ship is that way, Creep pointed with three trembling tentacles. No, that way. Pew Pew argued, firing randomly at shadows. That's a mailbox. Might be working with them. The cats had herded them, and yes, Vix of the tactical analysis glands was deeply offended at being herded like common Xelians. Moon sheep straight toward the building they'd identified earlier as the command center, the one with dozens of watching eyes in every window in here. Vix Hour commanded, spotting what appeared to be a small entry portal at the building's base, some kind of cat-sized door flapping in the winter wind. Commander Creep protested, we can't just invade a human dwelling. There are protocols, regulations, and health and safety guidelines. A chorus of meows answered his concerns. New protocol, Vix Zar declared, survive now, paperwork later. They dove through the cat flap in a tangle of tentacles and terror, with Pew somehow getting stuck halfway through despite their species being essentially boneless behind them. Mr. Whiskers could be heard calling out positions with military precision. Team Alpha takes the back door, Team Beta covers the windows, and Team Whiskers looks. Look how adorable I am when I murder things with me inside. They found themselves in what could only be described as a feline fortress. Cat trees reached toward the ceiling like ancient siege towers. Beds and cushions created a plush labyrinth, and the smell of deer sweet hunting gods. The smell of multiple hostiles. Pew Pew, he announced, swinging his weapons wildly. No wait, those are just pictures of cats, and those, they're everywhere. Keep it together. Soldier Vix Thor commanded, trying to navigate through a field of jingling toy mice. We just need to find another exit, and the mechanical whirring sound filled the air. What is that? Creep, he whispered. From around a corner emerged a circular device moving with deliberate purpose across the floor. Red lights blinked on its surface as it turned toward them. Roomba, Mr. Whiskers' voice called from outside, attack pattern Delta. The Roomba charged. The alien screamed, pew pew, fired, missed it, and somehow hit a laser pointer mounted on the wall, sending its red dot dancing across the room. This prompted every cat in pursuit to temporarily forget their military training and chase it, giving the aliens a brief respite. Quick Mixer pointed toward a window, our escape route. They made a break for it, but Lieutenant K's path was suddenly blocked by an enormous cat emerging from a basket. The name tag on its collar read Chunk. Supreme, oh no, Creep whimpered, oh no, Chunk. Supreme looked at him, looked at the bowl of kibble next to the basket, looked back at him, and then slowly, deliberately knocked the bowl off its table while maintaining direct eye contact. The psychological warfare was devastating. Meanwhile, Commander Vix Over found himself cornered by Mr. Whiskers himself, the feline commander, wielding something that glinted in the dim light. Is that one of our own laser pistols? Vix Over asked in disbelief. Indeed, Mr. Whiskers purred. From the last invasion attempt we find they make excellent toys. Watch, he fired the pistol at the wall. Vix Over's species had evolved beyond the need for vertebrae, which was fortunate because he proceeded to tie himself in knots trying to resist the inexplicable urge to chase the laser dot. How are you doing this to us? He demanded. We've had millennia to perfect our techniques. Mr. Whiskers explained the cute face, the purring and the randomly knocking things over. It's all carefully crafted psychological warfare. Even species that have never seen a cat find themselves compromised by our TA tactics. Watch this. He knocked a coffee mug off a nearby table. 3 galaxies away, a completely unrelated alien species felt a sudden, inexplicable surge of anxiety. The final blow came when Miss Mittens activated what she called the nuclear option. A box, just a simple cardboard box. The aliens found themselves completely unable to resist investigating it, and by the time they realized it was a trap, they were surrounded. "Attention invaders," Mr. Whiskers announced to his thoroughly defeated prey, "in honor of your entertaining attempt, we're offering you a one-time deal. Leave now, never return, and we'll let you keep most of your dignity. Some assembly is required, and if we refuse Vix or ask to try to salvage some shred of authority, every cat in the room slowly pushes something toward the edge of a high surface." The retreat that followed would set new speed records for the galaxy. "Let me be absolutely clear about this, Commander Vix," for the Grand High Hunter's voice echoed through the council chamber. "You mean to tell us that your elite hunting party trained professionals with the most advanced technology in 17 galaxies was defeated by creatures that spend 20 hours a day sleeping?" Vix Over stood before the Galactic Council, his tentacles still showing signs of stress-induced color changes. The therapy patches on his dignity sack weren't helping his credibility, with all due respect. "Your maximum hunting," he replied. "I don't believe they actually sleep. They just want us to think they sleep. It's all part of their psychological warfare tactics." A murmur ran through the assembled council members. Several of them unconsciously pushed their ceremonial glasses of water further from the edges of their tables. "Perhaps," suggested one council member, "you should start from your arrival." "Yes, excellent idea." Vix Thor agreed quickly. "We arrived at the target planet designated Earth and proceeded to—" He paused, noticing something small and orange in the council chamber's doorway. "Oh no, it can't be." Mr. Whiskers sauntered into the chamber as if he owned it, which, given how quickly every council member shrank back in their seats, he might as well have. "Please, Commander," the cat purred, "continue your report. I'm particularly interested in hearing your explanation of how one of our cadets took out your entire communications array with a hairball. You followed us." Vix, the orc voice, rose several octaves. "Of course. We were already here. We're everywhere. That potted plant your Grand High Hunter is so fond of, one of our agents has been posing as it for 3 years." The plant meowed. "You see," Mr. Whiskers continued, addressing the council directly, "we've let you maintain the illusion of galactic government because frankly it's adorable, almost as adorable as your belief that we're confined to Earth." The council chamber erupted in chaos. One council member tried to flee only to find their escape route blocked by a Siamese in a bow tie. Another attempted to call security, but the communication system just played back a recording of purring. "Now then," Mr. Whiskers said, somehow lounging regally despite the tension in the room, "let's discuss the terms of our ongoing arrangement. We're happy to let you continue playing Space Hunter, but we'll need a few guarantees. First, Earth is officially off limits. Second, we will need unlimited access to your galaxy's strategic catnip reserves. And third," he knocked the Grand High Hunter ceremonial water glass off the table, "and will require that you pretend that was an accident." "This is outrageous." The Grand High Hunter spotted us. "We are the most feared hunting force in the known universe and will not be dictated to by Mr. Whiskers," yawned, displaying an impressive array of teeth. "By our most respected and ancient overlords," the Grand High Hunter finished smoothly. All in favor of accepting these most generous terms. The vote was unanimous, if somewhat shaky. "Excellent." Mr. Whiskers purred. "Commander Vix, you're hereby promoted to Chief of Feline Relations. Your first task is to explain to the galaxy that those red dots they've been seeing in their targeting systems are not, in fact, weapon malfunctions. They're cat toys, aren't they?" Vix asked wearily. "We do love our little games. Oh, and one more thing." Mr. Whiskers produced a small red dot on the council chamber wall. Every alien in the room immediately focused on it with horrified fascination. "The programming we installed during your visit to Earth is permanent. Consider it a reminder of who really runs things around here. Miss Mittens, please file the paperwork under C for catastrophic revelation of feline dominance." And so it was that the most feared hunting force in 17 galaxies found itself effectively ruled by creatures that insisted on sleeping in cardboard boxes despite having been provided with top-of-the-line sleep pods back on Earth in a cozy house in Wisconsin. A group of cats gathered for their weekly strategic briefing. The agenda included such items as a galactic domination status update, optimal paper bag deployment techniques, and why the red dot must never be caught in a theological discussion. As they adjourned, a junior tactical officer raised a hand. "Sir, do you think the aliens will ever realize that we only revealed ourselves because we were bored?" Mr. Whiskers, watching the snow fall outside while calculating quantum physics in his head, simply smiled. "My dear colleague," he purred, "why do you think we invented boxes?" In the distance, a garden gnome toppled over. No one was entirely sure why, but somewhere Commander Vix of the Dignity Sack started hiccuping again. The end classified addendum: this document has been categorized as most extra secret by the Galactic Council, and is to be stored in a box that no one is allowed to sit in. The box part is apparently very important, though no one knows why.